Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all. It's awesome to be here.
It's good to be here. I think we're probably more excited to talk to each other up here.
We're excited to talk to you all,
and we're excited to talk to you. For many who don't know, I'm Ryan. This is Kim. But Kim's been my CEO coach for how long?
6, 7 years now.
6, 7 years. She's like helped me grow up a little bit. But it's super exciting, especially because we were there while she was writing this book.
You helped me edit it.
A little bit. Called Radical Candor. How many have read Kim's book? This will definitely be a book that'll sell, probably over 1 million copies, which is pretty crazy for a business book. But it's something that's completely changed the culture of our organization as we've scaled, and I've recommended it to just about everyone that I ever talk to because there's nothing like it in business that teaches you how to actually communicate. So why don't you tell everyone, just to start, a little bit more about Radical Candor?
So at the core, Radical Candor is about doing 2 things at the same time. It's about caring personally at the same time that you challenge directly. And it's easiest to understand what Radical Candor is by thinking a little bit about what it's not. So when you care personally, but you fail to challenge directly, that's ruinous empathy. And that's the mistake, actually, that most of us make the vast majority of the time. At Qualtrics, you had a very care personally culture, and we worked hard to get people to challenge each other directly. But there's also times when you do challenge directly, but you fail to show that you care personally. That I call obnoxious aggression. I used to call it kind of the asshole quadrant. But I quit doing that for a very important reason, because as soon as I did that, people would sort of write this 2x2, care personally as the vertical, challenge directly as horizontal, and then they would start writing names in boxes. And so I beg of you, don't use the Radical Candor framework that way. Don't use it to judge one another or to judge yourself. So, and very often when we realize we've been a jerk, and we all behave like a jerk at least once a day, it's very tempting, instead of moving the right direction on care personally, to go the wrong way on challenge directly. And then you wind up in the worst place of all, and that's manipulative insincerity. That's backstabbing, political, passive-aggressive kind of behavior. And weeding that out of your company, I think, really helped you all grow and scale. I mean, Ryan, you were, as far as I can tell, I'm sure it didn't feel this way to you, but you went from nowhere to $8 billion in a blink of an eye. I'm sure it felt a little longer.
19 years. It was a long blink.
A lot of hard work. You had this amazing conference that you organized, went from 700 people to 16,000 people in how many years?
4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. So you had a lot going on. Why did you take the time to worry about Radical Candor?
So I think everyone's concerned about their culture. They talk about it a lot these days. When we were starting, we started in Provo, Utah. We were probably 10 years in before the word culture even came up. We were just trying to survive. And, the one thing that is constant is your culture is always changing. Everyone's like, don't change the culture. It's like, that is such a lie.
Yeah,
because with every single hire you make, whether you like it or not, your culture is changing. And you have 2 choices. You can either throw your own culture changing aspects into it or just let it go. And Radical Candor for us was really good. We established a bunch of processes around our company. Number 1 would be, how we grade people or how we pay people and their merits. Number 2 would be, we wanted to create a total meritocracy. Number 2 was, all of the comp and benefits and time off and all of these things that kind of establish the culture in a little bit of a way. And then we'd set up our meeting schedules. A lot of CEOs call me today and they're like, Ryan, how do you run your staff meeting? How do you do your meetings? How do you manage your team? We put a lot of time into this, but until Radical Candor came out, we had never discussed how are we going to talk to each other. how do we communicate with each other? And how are we going to do it at scale? And what's the baseline that is expected? And so we went through the entire training. We bought everyone the book, and we said, okay, we are going to be open. And what happened is, sometimes we're not radically candid, and we just maybe even just got to candid, right? But
that's progress.
But what happened is people knew what to expect. And I've learned that people can handle change, but uncertainty,
Not
and
so
we had
much.
this discussion a lot, like they're not good with that. And so the amount of times in our company where someone's like, okay, can I be radically candid with you, or in the name of radical candor? And I'm like, I've never said no. I've always been like, yes, as painful as it might be, everyone starts to talk. And when you're bringing people into the company, you're bringing people in that have 15 years with another company and bad behaviors. You've got passive aggressive personalities, and to be able to walk in and say, hey, here's how we're gonna communicate, it probably does more for your culture than anything else you will do, because it takes all the garbage out. And it's been super helpful, but it's also hard because you have to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's radical candor, I think, is it's something you have to do every day. It's like exercise. You can't just do it once and you're not done. But it should feel like, I always say radical candor should feel like brushing and flossing. It shouldn't feel like a root canal, right?
Yeah.
So it should feel like basic relationship hygiene, where you feel kind of, if you feel kind of gross if you leave the house without brushing your teeth. You feel kind of gross if you leave a conversation and there's something that you needed to say that you didn't say because it was uncomfortable. And I think helping people build the stamina for this and develop a habit. I mean, fundamentally, radical candor is about these impromptu 2-minute conversations that happen between everybody all day long. And so there's not like a cool process you can roll out and make that happen. That would feel sort of Big Brother-ish, right? So how can you help this come from the inside in a team of people that's growing, where you got new people all the time? It's a cool trick.
There are these moments that happen. I mean, we all have the friends. I was thinking about this the other day. I've got this one friend who's so refreshing. Every time we hang out, he's just low maintenance. We pick up right where we left off. There's never any questions about what he wants. If he wants something, he's gonna say it.
Yeah.
And it's just refreshing. Then you have these other people in your life where you're always wondering, you're always questioning what's going on. It's so much work. It requires so much brain capacity. Imagine if your work and your culture was like the first friend. And that's what makes your culture contagious, because anywhere else that your employee base or your team goes, the majority of the world is like that second friend, where it's just a brain suck. And this is what I think it's some levels, and we've got to continue to do it. I think this is what we've achieved in certain parts of the company, where it just flows. The team's just rolling, because they're not worried about who gets credit for what goes on, because everything's out on the table constantly.
Yeah, so the goal, that's exactly right. The goal of Radical Candor is to build a culture where everyone can love their work and their colleagues, not in the marriage-destroying HR disaster sense of the word that we read so much about today, but in the collegial sense of the word. And so I think one of the things that you did at Qualtrics that made it real for people is that you, as the CEO, were open. Like, I think one of the mistakes that people make about Radical Candor is that they think it's all about the boss giving the employee criticism. And instead, it starts with the boss soliciting criticism, right? And you did that. So a lot of people ask me, what do I do if my boss is not so open to criticism? In fact, I once gave a Radical Candor talk, and somebody tweeted at me afterwards, tried Radical Candor on my boss, got fired. I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. I know a lot of people, like, how can I help? And the guy tweeted back and said, actually, I've already got another job. You did me a big favor. Thank you. But so it all worked out, luckily, for this individual. Yeah, exactly. But so the question is, what can you all do if you don't have a great boss like Ryan who's begging you for the feedback? So I want to give a couple of order of operations pieces of advice, and then maybe you can give some advice for how you manage to really solicit, to prove to the people on your team that you really wanted to hear it. Because it's not every boss where people come all day long and say, I'm gonna criticize you, which is basically what people are saying. So one of the things you can do, no matter where you are in your organization, is you can start by soliciting it. You, like Ryan, don't dish it out till you prove you can take it. And then you focus on the good stuff. Radical candor is not only about criticism, it's also about praise. And I think this is one of the things you all are really good at Qualtrics. It's about focusing on the accomplishments. Very often what happens is somebody's doing something that bugs us. And we don't say anything, and pretty soon that's all we can see is that thing that's bugging us. We forget about all the things we like about working with this person. So it's spend just as much time thinking about how you're going to give praise as how you're going to give criticism. And then when you go into the conversation, start out like Ryan's people are starting with him. I've got some feedback for you. Is now a good time? Or would you like to hear it? Or is it okay if I'm radically candid with you? A shared vocabulary is helpful. So I think radical candor can go up, down, and sideways. But what did you do? Because one of the things that I really admired about you the first question you asked me when we started working together, I write about this in the book, is I've got this team, I've got a lot of new people, how can I build trust quickly? And I imagine that's what you all are doing with your communities, is you're building trust quickly. And that is the essence of scaling a culture. So how did you build that trust quickly with your team?
Well, I think we live in this virtual world, which is often hard to virtually build trust. Like I don't know how to do it. And last weekend, we just had all of our top 100 leaders of Qualtrics in town, and we went to Stanford for the day.
Yeah.
And the before and after feeling within that group was palatable. It was like night and day after we had just spent a day together, not fighting with each other, not trying to get things and resources from each other, not trying to get the ship to all go in the same direction. We were just there to learn together. And Bill McDermott, I sent a picture to Bill McDermott, the CEO of SAP, and Bill's like, those who learn together win together, right? And I was like, wow, that was kind of interesting. I'd heard that before, but not in that context. So what we want to do, and I think it plays along with this group, is how do we have an experience together, and how do we have experiences together? And I think that's what what we try to do with our event that we do every year. We started with 700 people in Provo, Utah, and actually Salt Lake City, and everyone said, no, you can't do this event in Salt Lake. You're going to get out of too many people, and it's not going to scale, and we'll have 16,000 people. I think last year we had Obama and Oprah and Imagine Dragons, and
it's amazing.
It was just such an amazing lineup, and it's an experience summit. And when we asked Oprah why she came, I said, she's like, I only do a couple of these a year. I said, why'd you come? And she said, because it was about breakthrough experiences, and I wanted to share my breakthrough experiences. And I thought that was so cool. So it was something that we actually created, but what we're trying to do is give our customers the same thing that worked for our team. We want to actually get together, and we want to have an experience together because, business is weird, new players enter the market. If there's nothing but a virtual bond there, it's not going to go real well. It's going to be easy to be disrupted. And when we have that connection, when we've been through that experience together, that's when we found our longest relationships, and they can succeed in any environment. And it's amazing what we can do together. And so that's the same philosophy both with my team and that we try to do with our customer base. And it's been super helpful.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think that relationships don't scale, right? None of us can have more than a small number of real relationships, but culture does scale. And when those core relationships that you have with your team are strong, then they have similar relationships with their teams, and that's what really scales. And the same sort of thing happens, I think, in communities. It's interesting. In the book, I write about how radical candor is fundamentally about putting your phone in your pocket, looking people in the eye, and remembering how to just talk. Because a lot of radical candor is not about talking, but listening. And knowing whether you're going in the right direction or the wrong direction requires that you see the other person's response. And yet, after I finished writing the book, I started this company. We were building this app to help people be more radically candid. And the first app didn't really work. The second app didn't really work. The third app didn't really work. And then I was at a performance that my daughter was doing. And she was singing, Believe It or Not, It's Just Me, you know that, what's that song? Anyway, and I was filming it, and I was sort of looking at it on my phone, and then I looked up from my phone and looked at my daughter, and like tears sprang to my eyes. It was such a different, powerfully different experience, looking at my actual daughter than looking at her on the iPhone. And I realized I forgot the core essence of radical candor was about these in-person experiences and building real relationships and communication. And obviously, we need to translate that online, but I think what you all are doing is so important in terms of helping people communicate in a way that's authentic and real and helps organizations scale and builds trust quickly.
Yeah, and I think the communication goes not only how you communicate internally, but externally with your customer base. I think if your customer base knows the style and the swagger and how this brand, I mean, we all know those brands that just, when they communicate, whether it's online or through Twitter or through email, it's just, there's a different swagger. Like, they talk differently. They've established what their style is. And it's amazing how, if you don't establish what your style is, someone else is going to establish that for you, and it's probably not going to be the style that you want, but it's something we spend little time working on. I think the other thing not to be afraid of is, both with radical candor, with building something, is the only way to really have something that you're proud of is to go through a little adversity. You know, if you think through something you're all really proud of, a moment that you're proud of, there's always an adversity. Like, we sit back and talk about all these great coaching sessions, remember this time. Every time we were on the phone, there was a crisis.
There was something terrible happening.
Yeah, I was in the fetal position going, how am I gonna do this? And then I would call Kim, and she'd be like, Ryan, it's okay. Like, I remember once calling and saying, Kim, I know the answer. The team doesn't get it. I'm trying to get them there. Why do I have to wait for everyone to get there? Why don't I just come in and bark it out? And she's like, well, because they won't do anything. They'll just agree with you, and then nothing will happen. If the team doesn't get the buy-in themselves on what you're going to go build, then, you know, it's the equivalent of putting a coin in the slot and no one getting out of sight, where if they do get it, they'll be gone for 3 weeks. So which one do you want?
Something that you couldn't even imagine.
Exactly. And I was like, whoa, okay. But at that moment in time, it was such an obstacle because I was what felt like a person out on an island. But those are the stories you get to look back and go tell. So all of you are working on something. And if you just actually think about it, is what story am I going to be able to tell after this? What's the story? Oh, well, that's not that interesting. Maybe I should tweak a couple things. Maybe we should go a little bigger. Over time, you get to look back where, you know, I've got 19 years of stories, and that's really all I've got to show for it. When we're together, it's just a bunch of stories that we talk about. And if you go back to the early Google days or early Apple days, all you're doing is telling stories and almost reminiscing about the people you used to work with and those experiences you had.
And I think you're touching on something so important in storytelling, because the things that you all are doing, it's so hard to measure the value of community. And yet we all value it more than any of the things that are easier to measure. And I think if you can learn how to measure what you can measure, but translate the stuff that really has value to story, to narrative, then you will get the credit that you all deserve as you build community.
Yeah, I'll just give you one more point on that. 2 years ago, we were putting on our big event, and I had gone to like $3 million or $4 million budget over what we were planning. And we were a venture, we were a venture-backed company, and going to your VCs and saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do, this is who we're gonna bring, this is what's going on. I just get these puzzled looks. And I'll never forget, one of our VCs, I made them come out to our summit and sit in the front row. And after the first day, one of them came back and was like, this is what you guys should be doing. This is your jam. This is who you are. Like, this is your thing as Qualtrics. So there was a fundamental shift from, hey, you're just putting on a big party in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, how do you measure the ROI?
To, oh my word, this is your competitive advantage. And the commonality there was they were present. So if you're ever struggling to get people to buy into the community or buy into the events, or you're struggling within your organization to get buy-off or trying to do more, if you don't put that person at the event so they can feel and touch it and have the experience, and as Kim said, see it in their eyes, it's never gonna go anywhere. So just ask them to attend one. Ask them to be a part of one.
Use Radical Candor to get them there, because that part's hard too.
Yeah, and especially in the name of getting close to the customer, because that will change the entire perspective, especially with marketing becoming so, I call it intoxicating, where it's all virtual, it's all coming at you at once. And then you just can't all of a sudden just jump right into the community game. You're building the opposite of that. You're building a way to actually get close to the customer without having to blast 4,000 emails. And the organizations that you're working on are gonna need that network, and they're gonna need that community. And they don't know when they will, if they're not buying into it now, but they will. And it's your responsibility to go build that and to do it scrappy. I think, you don't need $4 million to go do something great, right? And that's one of the things that we've seen. I think we're over time.
Thank you all. Go out, go forth, be radically candid.
All right.